Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel. Let me tell you a story about a man pushed too far. I blew my top reviewing Suicide Squad, and I don't regret it. I won't walk back on any of it, and it was a turning point. An uncorking of the bottle, if you will. I can't seem to put the genie back in, and I really tried. I did. You can check the past few videos. I tried to get back into the rhythm of celebrating games and doing playthroughs, and I just want to be a force for good in a space that I love so dearly, but it would seem this is not going to stop, and I've had enough. The part that you missed is that I was recording episodes for a game called Perasper, which is actually a pretty cool game mechanically. It's about terraforming Mars, one of my favorite topics. They do some really interesting things with regards to sort of hard sci-fi, science adjacent, it just ticks a lot of boxes. But one of the core components is it has a narrative carrying it through. You play as this AI character who kind of waxes introspective, which to me is fine. That's an interesting idea. And I've played a chunk of this game before, admittedly more off the channel than on, where maybe you can listen to a podcast or Spotify, or you just skim through the story. It never really impacted me quite as much, but now that I have really been activated, for lack of a term, I can't unsee things. And while I was, use your terminology, carrying water, ignoring a bit of the narrative insofar as the AI seemed more interested in talking about how sublime the landscape was, or worrying about whether they'd be perceived as a cog in the machine by human colonists. Kind of really weird red flag stuff that anyone interested in this game, which would be me, engineers, technical minds, right? You don't have to be a super high IQ dude, but if you're interested in terraforming a planet with pseudo-hard sci-fi, you're probably expecting an AI that's kind of thinking more about calculations, efficiency, outcomes, the way that an AI would think. Not about having its feelings hurt. At one point it says that was a dark thought when it worried that people would just see it as an extension of the Mars project. But what really went from, let's say, obtuse, unaware writing into the next step was when, now bear with me as I take you on this journey, is when you discover an outpost from an abandoned Chinese space project that came before you, where it's a nuclear silo, and they were planning to potentially nuke the planet's caps, which I believe you can go on to do in the game, which in and of itself is cool because it's something that's open for discussion. It's something that's been floated as an interesting idea that would accelerate the process. For anyone that knows anything about it, even just a cursory amount, it's a relatively harmless conversation to have. It's theory crafting. We're not talking about dropping nukes over a Western city centre on Earth. And it hurts me that I have to explain this. And I'll put up a splash or some B-roll or something like that. But effectively, you get two choices, the illusion of choice, if you will, where it takes a dig overtly at Elon Musk, some 20th century businessman that it says, who came up with the idea, and it attributes moral classification in that what sort of human would come up with that idea. And that's where it goes from creative license of a possessed writer as opposed to what actually becomes suspension of disbelief of what you would think maybe an AI would have if it could have introspective thought. It wouldn't worry about the moral decency of a human being. If it actually did worry about what sort of human would come up with it, it would probably say a 1%er, someone who's innovative and thinking outside the box. Whether it turns out to be the viable solution or not, that would be probably the closest designation of something outside the human condition trying to legitimately understand what sort of human could come up with that. But instead the game gives you two choices. One being a terrible person, the other being someone driven solely by business and profit. How gross.
A well-known space entrepreneur around that time popularized the idea of using nuclear weapons on the poles. It is true that they would succeed in melting the poles, But what kind of human would come up with that idea? A businessman purely seeks to profit from the space race in the 21st century.
How incredibly biased, but not just biased by what I could, for lack of any other term I could come up with, biased by an unintelligent person. Now, I'm not saying nuking the poles on Mars is the solution, but speculating about it is not beyond moral reproach. It's so incredibly weird that people, this isn't just a Twitter post. This is a game written, staffed, vetted, published. There's money behind it. There's so many moving parts and people involved, and no one thought, hey, does this actually sound like what a logic-based AI would argue and have as decision trees? Or is this a writer that just doesn't like Elon Musk personally, taking an opportunity to insert that into their work product? There's a term for that. It's called propaganda, where what your work product is more interested in pushing a message that aligns with your personal biases. And instead of just using social conversation or anything like that, you're using an earned meritocratic platform that could have gone to someone more qualified for the job. And you're, instead of turning out accurate work product, you're coloring it with personal belief. It's abuse of your position. And as I said, fundamentally propaganda. Now, Scarlett, this seems like a small thing to get upset about. Maybe you just haven't got off the bench like I have. But the truth is, as someone who had just been absolutely disillusioned from the experience with Justice League, and I took deep breaths, stepped away, tried to go back to my model, tried to go and live in my cottage as a man of peace and just make videos about fun games, to then come across this almost immediately in a genre that, let's be honest, these hack creative writers whom you would think would stay in their lane and stay out of, science, engineering, managerial type games, they still manage to weasel into them. And it's not even just a poor narrative, it's an agendaed narrative. We can't escape it, it's getting everywhere. It's in indie games. It's in everything. I tried, and short of just not gaming at all, short of just stepping away, shutting down the channel and removing myself from the entire system, I feel the only options left to me are 1, shill, pretend it's not there. No, I don't want to do that. So that leaves the only other option. And I'm not really one for half measures. We draw battle lines. We go to war, at the risk of sounding extreme and hyperbolic, but there is no other way to describe it. Something really important to me. It is. I know it's just gaming, but if you're listening to this video and you've gotten this far, it's probably really important to you. My fellow friend of, maybe you're out there swinging a sledgehammer for 40 hours a week and, you've got an angry wife and kids and all that, and you just want to put up your feet and play video games. And this one thing, your one little hideaway, your final retreat is being co-opted by people that don't like you and are actively coming up with marketing strategies, and companies now. Sweet Baby Inc. is something that we'll have to talk about in a video and has been brought to my attention. There are actual institutional companies, consulting firms being created, and their entire business model is how to fuck with you. So that's it. Scarlett goes to war. I'm not sure on the specifics, but here's one really core tenet that I know in my heart, and it's the hardest pill to swallow, which means it's probably the truest thing of all. It's all good and well when a shit game is full of bad writing, ideology, deconstruction, all this horrible stuff. It's easy to shit can a bad game and boycott it, but the problem that I tried to raise with Suicide Squad, and Perasper helps highlight the problem further, is that it's getting into good games, okay games. And on this path, this is the next step, and this is why I'm finally mobilizing at long last, is that you're going to have 10 out of 10 Game of the Year games, right? I suppose some people could probably argue it with some of the PlayStation cinematic sort of stuff, but we're going to start seeing games that you as a gamer are going to actually have to confront the idea that there will be a must-play game. It will be the best game of the year, but it will be riddled with all these horrible things. and you will have to decide, do I refuse to play this game or not? And like I said, in my current mindset, my state, my mobilization, my joining the culture war, I'm sorry, I said it in my Discord, I don't want to do it. And I don't have a better term. If you've got a better term than war, then tell me. But those that go to war, that have to defend something, I mean, maybe not war, maybe your house being invaded, right? Maybe someone's kicking in your front door and threatening your family. I don't want to fight those guys, but by golly, I fucking will. So choose your terms, right? If war is a little bit on the nose and a bit too sharp for you, I get it, that's fine. I don't really love using the term either, but I don't know what else to say other than my hobby is actually under attack by people that have decided they don't like me. And as someone that doesn't go around being overtly horrible or racist or hateful, and I just want to play games and love my fellow man, like, I don't really see why I shouldn't throw in and push back. And so, as I said, I don't do half measures. Lines get drawn. And that's the funny thing. Horrible as it sounds, war probably is the best analogy. When you're at war with another country, it doesn't matter. They could be a nice guy. You still fight them. You still have zero tolerance for them while it's ongoing. And so, zero tolerance is how it has to be. The real point is, and I'll probably make a dedicated video when I come up with the tenets, is that if this shit is in the game, zero tolerance. That's just how it has to be. And if you guys want to be part of this as well, you have to be that way as well. It could be a game that you're really, really anticipating. Might be the most anticipated game of the year. You've been waiting 5 years for this game. But if it's got this crap in it, you have to just boycott it. You just do. It's more powerful than voting with your wallet. You need to practice a stoic restraint. But each to their own. I'm not necessarily trying to get people involved, but that's sort of how it's going to be with me from now on. The channel's going to change. I didn't do this. This is me reacting. We've discussed this. I'm a normie. I'm about as normie as it gets. But yeah, I'm probably going to turn into one of those channels. God help me. Sunlight's the best disinfectant. So leave it with me for a bit. Let's Plays are probably going to stop, you know, and I don't necessarily want to just be miserable, negative stuff all the time. So I don't know. Maybe, you know, there's probably scope for, well, there's absolutely scope for celebrating games that we love and all that. But the problem is, and again, a game of the year is only one hotfix patch away from putting propaganda in it. So it's tough. It's going to be tough to root this shit out. But I'm going to try.